Other than that, I'm going to leave you to it until the time at which we are ready to stream. And we're good. All right. Never mind. So, Patrick. I've known Patrick for, what, a year now or so at least? Yeah. He works for a company, Simple Focus. He does operations there. And you get my notes down here. So they have a stable of SaaS products. They're a consultancy, but they also work on a stable of SaaS products for various clients. He's a designer by trade, but has dev chops when no one's looking over his shoulder. Also, a little known fact about Patrick is that he used to be in a band called Annie. And if your sleuthing skills are on Spotify are pretty decent, you might be able to find said records and give them a listen. And somebody will get that royalty check, maybe not him.
Not me.
Not him. That tiny, tiny royalty check. That would be fun. Other than that, so Patrick is going to talk to us today about how we can perhaps infuse our digital products with a sense of ownership that is all too often missing from them. So everybody give it up for Patrick.
All right. Is this thing working? Sounds like it. All right. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, my name is Patrick. Work at Simple Focus, doing operations. I may have misled through my bio a little bit about my dev chops. I can't really do much, to be honest with you. I used to build websites back in the day, but nowadays I spend most of my time sending emails and doing spreadsheets and things like that. So as a result, it's been kind of hard trying to think of something that I could talk to a room full of developers about, and kind of gave up on teaching you guys anything because you know development stuff, I don't. Instead, I want to do a sort of a little UX/customer experience, like kind of like weirdo thought experiment. The goal is to try to get you guys to think about the products that you work on in a little bit of a different way than you normally think about it, in hopes of revealing some interesting opportunities. So, a little exercise. Imagine a physical thing that you use every day, something that you love, something maybe that's beautiful or not, but it works really well and you love it. I'll give you a hint. I'm thinking of my jeans. I love my jeans. I've worn them pretty much every day for a year, and I don't wash them. It's that kind of jeans. Kyle can attest to the fact that I wear them all the time. All right, so think of a thing that you really, really love. All right, who does it belong to? Hopefully, your answer is it belongs to you. You know, there are cars and houses and things, that's kind of questionable. But all right, so now think about an app that you use every day. And I know you're all developers, so like you might think of like your coding software or something. Okay, skip that. Don't think about that. Think about something on your phone, or you know, like a web service that you use every day. For me, I'm going to pick Apple Music, not because I necessarily love it, but if I open up my phone and I look at the battery usage, it's like way at the top. So that means I must use it a lot. So the question, who does that belong to? The answer is going to vary for all of you, depending on what you chose. If your answer is that the app owner is who owns it, or the service provider, then you played right into my hand. If it's, oh, it's me, I own it, I bought this app, it's whatever, like, that's cool, and stick with that, and keep that in mind as we go throughout the rest of this, and you might kind of understand a little bit why. All right, so my jeans, Apple's music. So does ownership really matter? Particularly if you're subscribing to some sort of service, you understand that, that you're using somebody else's thing. This all started for me actually with music streaming services. I was getting pretty annoyed. I've quit and joined all of the services like 3 times. Getting really annoyed by the amount of myself that I was giving to them, that I was interjecting, like giving them my music tastes, listening to music over and over and over, and repeatedly it didn't feel like they were giving back to me what I was putting in. So I would open up a music streaming app and it didn't feel like my music collection. It felt like I was listening to their stuff. And I feel this with a lot of particularly web-based productivity software as well. Like repeated usage doesn't really seem to reward me with it feeling more like it's mine. So it's just like giving up so much of myself and not seeing myself back in software. So I would say for that reason, yes, ownership does matter. So in the products that you build, actually literally giving over the service or whatever it is you provide probably doesn't actually make any sense. But you can give people a feeling of ownership, hence perceived. And I would argue that simply pursuing it is going to give people nice little like UX nuggets and positive experiences that would ultimately create a more meaningful relationship and also breed loyalty. So back to my pants. After the music streaming services, I started thinking about physical things that held meaning to me. Thinking about pants, right? And I just started thinking about all the stuff around me in my house itself, my car, whatever. And what is it about those things that makes me feel like they really belong to me, other than like the literal fact that they belong to me? So I'm going to go through 5 quick things about stuff that belongs to you. They can be physically seen in the real world. You really do own them. You could customize them if you felt so inclined. They're well made, generally, and built to last if they're the kinds of things that we tend to really love and cherish. And they show wear. So I'm going to flip this and make these into sort of action, command things. We're going to look at these in terms of products and UX and what that means, okay? So this is an easy one. I'm going to go through it quick. So my wife is a school psychologist. That's a person who goes to schools and assesses children who may be either delayed or advanced and places them into special programs. Because she's in my life, I have maybe an above average understanding of childhood psychology. So this term, object permanence, it's this thing where when a child gets between 4 and 7 months, they start understanding like that things still exist when they don't see them. So if you like put a ball in front of a 2-month-old and then you do this number or you throw it in another room or something, like, oh, that thing just doesn't exist anymore, and they forget about it. Whereas you do that to a 6-month-old or a 7-month-old, and you put it behind your back, they kind of start doing that number, looking for it. So that's the nature of physical things, that if you can see it, if it's in front of you, you're going to remember it. If it's a physical object in your life and it starts to, and it maybe moves to the back of your garage or your closet or something like that, like you might forget about it a little bit, but you do have reminders that it's there because it physically exists. That's harder with applications, particularly like putting stuff in folders on your phone, or like how many times have you signed up for a web service, like a trial, and then forgotten completely about it. So people have more or less solved this problem. It's called marketing. So doing ads, sponsoring stuff, speaking, blog posts, newsletters, whatever. There's like 1,000 different things. I'm not a marketer, but that's what marketing's for, is staying in front of people. Being all about the owner and not the creator. This is about focusing your content and the data on the user, not you, the one who's providing it. So you can kind of see, this is part of my record shelf. So I'm kind of sitting on the music thing a little bit. But it's one of those big IKEA shelves that everybody puts their records in if they have records. It's this object in my house that takes up space, and I can touch it. It has a smell. And most importantly, when I want to listen to my music, I go to this thing, and I know that that's my music, and I'm going to find stuff that I like. So this doesn't do that for me. Now, I've been ragging on music services, and admittedly, this is, I'm a lapsed subscriber, so I get this big ad, like come and join. But if I were paying for Spotify, this would be telling me to listen to the new Drake album or Nicki Minaj or something that I generally don't care about or care about at varying degrees. This doesn't feel like it has anything to do with me. I know the more you put into Spotify, apparently it gets a little bit better. I just never found that it actually really did that. Currently, I use Apple Music. It's a little bit better on that front, in my opinion. For what it's worth, if anybody remembers Rdio, they kind of nailed it. It was really nice in that way. Little sidebar. I personally think this is why people hate ads in their content. So imagine you're like flipping through Facebook or Twitter or whatever, Instagram, and you see, and you're like going through this like content that friends or people you know or people that you subscribe to have all put in this little pot. And then every 5 posts or so, you get an ad. It's like, shit, this isn't, like, this is Instagram's content. This isn't my friend's content or something like that. And it really bugs me. I understand that ads are a part of monetization and you kind of have to do it. But it's just my opinion that that's one of the big problems with ads. So how can we make the applications that we build feel like they belong to users? Using the word recently in front of stuff. This has done a lot, for music, recently played, recent docs, recent tasks, recent projects, etc. That's pretty easy to say, a little bit harder to do. Using the word my, that's been around at least since 1995, maybe before that. Microsoft was actually pretty smart with that one when they put the word my in front of documents. That did a really good job of making this folder feel like it was your stuff. So just simply putting the word my in front of a grouping of things in an application just tells people that this is theirs. So this is the big one for me. This isn't really about security. It's about the idea that when somebody puts time and energy into putting data into your application, that you should really make that somehow transferable. The way a lot of applications do this are like, oh yeah, you can export a CSV if you ever wanted to, which I've found to not really always be particularly helpful. But that's a good thing, right? Letting people export it, particularly in formats that could theoretically be imported into another maybe competing service. It helps users feel like that belongs to them. If possible, though, using some sort of open data format, which is going to vary widely for whatever it is you're building, but putting it into some sort of bucket of data that can actually be used by other services through APIs, et cetera. The best example I can think of this is fitness tracking. So you've got stuff like Runkeeper. You put the phone on your arm and you go run and do all that. And they've actually done a pretty good job of connecting with all of these other services so that like if you go and do a 30-minute run, then you can go look on Strava or Gyroscope or all these other services and kind of do the analytics part somewhere else. I think that's really cool. I like the way they do that. Apple's Health Kit is actually kind of a weird proprietary version of the same thing, so that's not what I'm promoting here, but they're kind of sort of doing that. But the point is that users should feel like they're feeding their data, not feeding your big data source. So next one, encouraging customization. So people like to make their things look like their things. Pretty sweet blinged out phone, awesome jackets. Presumably that thing up on this car makes it faster or something. It looks badass, so does that. But bringing functional improvements, water cooling a gaming PC also looks kind of badass, but whatever. So this is my kitchen. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I want to just make like the quick point about how you're always supposed to put spices within reach of where you're cooking. Do you guys know what a salt pig is? Yeah, okay. So short version, you put salt in this thing, It's open. It's next to your like stove all the time. And so when you're cooking, you're doing this number, you can just throw salt in it like every 5 minutes, like you're supposed to when you're cooking. But people organize their kitchens the way they need it to be, the way they're going to use it. You alphabetize all your spices, but then you put the ones up front that you actually use. It makes that experience feel like yours. So in our applications, we should be giving up some control of how it not only looks, but also how it works. So, background colors and whatever, like that's a thing. People have been doing that for a long time. But, letting people change what their start page is when they log in, maybe default sorting options, or at least remember their sorting options, how they group things, etc. Just letting them make it their own somehow. Desktop applications have actually been really good at this for years. Again, Microsoft, even Adobe stuff. I use OmniFocus for task management, and it's probably almost to a fault customizable. But desktop applications just have this tendency to expect you to spend a ton of time in their application, and you're going to spend the time actually customizing it. Web apps and mobile apps, I don't know, maybe it's because the technology is still in the development phase, or obviously it's in the development phase, but the thing, it's still relatively new, but there seems to be this lack of belief that people want to kind of get in there and muck it up and make it how they want to make it. So I think just making it more customizable is going to make it feel more like it belongs to people. All right, build to last. You may think this is what I'm talking about, and it is kind of what I'm talking about. Doing all the good, smart development things to make an application strong. Security stuff, making sure it scales from 10 users to 5 million users, good servers, not using 8 different frameworks to build it, etc. Like, yeah, that's good stuff. What I really am interested in, though, is building things to scale for an individual. So what does it look like when they have no data in something, or just a little bit of data, or a lot of data? Does the UI hold together 3 years down the road when somebody's been putting all their junk in your application? Also, you want to think about how people use your application in unintended ways. Really, I just put this in here as an excuse to show you my favorite Pinterest board of all time. I'm going to drink water while you look at it. So the fact that every single one says Sammy Sosa, yes, I'm the real Sammy Sosa, and this is my Pinterest. I love it so much. I look at this at least 3 times a year. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. But okay, seriously, if you have customer support, whether it's a small application and you are customer support, or you're working at a larger organization and there's customer support, spend some time there and just look at how people are using your application in weird ways. Simple Focus owns Ballpark, which is invoicing and estimating and time tracking software. And for a while, I was kind of lead on customer support on it. And it was really fun to watch how people worked around the limitations of the app. So it couldn't do something, and I'll do it this weird way. It was really fun. And occasionally, we would take that information and use it to build new things with it. So you can expand the capabilities of your application. All right. This is kind of the weird part, so let's kind of have fun with it. Repetition of behavior should make going down a path easier. In nature, that's what happens. So it's how little babbling brooks become rivers and Grand Canyons and things. This pathway through the woods, I'm going to make up a story about it, but presumably at some point there was a deer or something that said, hey, I bet there's some water over here. I'm gonna take this path, and kind of wound through some trees, and over months decided that's a really good path, and I'm gonna keep going down this, and it started wearing it down. And then eventually a human comes along and they're like, oh, look, there's kind of sort of a path and I need some water, so I'm going to go down it. And a bunch of other people start doing the same thing. Eventually, it looks like maybe there's like some trees that have been chopped a little bit or something, so somebody came through and was like, oh, I'm going to make this even easier, and they manually go through and make more space. From my understanding of history, this is kind of how all the main roads happen in old towns, or a lot of them, not all of them. So yeah, you get something like this. That's how we use analytics for the most part. It's sort of big data-y, but the movements of a lot of people swaying the experience through an application and having it evolve over time. If you're doing that, if you're looking at analytics and letting that drive user flows and the experience within your application, you're doing an awesome job. Okay, usually, particularly with websites, people use analytics to see that the thing they want users to do is failing or succeeding. If you're using it to actually shape the experience, that's awesome. What I kind of want to talk about, though, is small data. So contracting that analytics and looking at how individual users are using your application, and then potentially altering that user's experience based upon how they've used it. There's lots of different things you can use to do this. We've used mixed panel in the past. It looks kind of old, so I'm sure there's newer stuff. Yeah, watching your users. So I listen to podcasts. Do y'all know who John Siracusa is? Yeah, he's kind of a Mac nerd guy, but he does a lot of podcasting and kind of talking about life and randomness. He's a super smart guy. You should look him up. He told a story on one of his shows back in the spring, and I went and tried to find it, and I couldn't find it, so I'm going to paraphrase it and probably not get it exactly right. But he noticed in his house, he lives in Boston, and he noticed in the doorway about it was like in the hallway. It wasn't the outside door. It was an interior doorway. He noticed this notch about yay high that had started wearing on the door frame. And he's a very detail-oriented person, and it was really bugging him because he couldn't figure out where this was coming from. He was like, oh, my house is falling apart. So he watched, and he looked, is it my keys? And trying to figure out what was causing this. So amount of time passes. I've forgotten how long. He notices, I think his wife, she comes through that doorway holding one of those laundry baskets that goes on your hip. And of course, that makes, this much width, and the doorway's this width, so it kind of does the little shimmy thing through it. And sure enough, the edge of the basket hits right in that area. He was like, oh shit, that's where this thing came from. Awesome. And so it kind of blew my mind, because what was really cool about that is that actually every time she was going, because it had to be her because of her height, that it had to be the same person doing this over and over. And so every time she went through it, she was actually making it easier for herself to go through, because she was making this little track for her laundry basket to go through. I think that's super rad. So let's try rewarding repeated usage. Making it feel like the user has been somewhere as often as they have. So before I mentioned recent items, but what about just elevating frequently used items? You might think that's the same thing, but it's really not. And also, not just content, but actions. So taking things that people do often and bringing them up. So if I go into your application and I read the same 3 types of things, or do the same 3 actions every time, shouldn't those things be elevated in some way, visually elevated in some way? And then making user flows themselves, so not just individual items, but the way you go through an application, potentially easier on an individual basis. All right, so quickly, here's Google Drive. It took me a long time to blur out stuff because there's a lot of stuff in Google Drive. But like I said before, I mostly just write emails and make spreadsheets and things during the day and helping designers do good work. So I'm in Google Drive a lot, and it was actually not until I started putting this specific slide together that I even noticed that there was a last modified thing up there. So I actually had no idea how any of this stuff was organized and why it was in the order that it was. Add to that these folders up here, I think when Google Docs first came out, I made some folders because I thought organization would be cool. And then I haven't opened these in like probably 2 years. But yet they're the very first thing on the page every single time I open it. Also, these three that I've not blurred, I open these all the damn time. Like every third time I open up Google Drive, I'm going to one of those documents and making an addition or whatever. But yet, they're kind of highlighted right now, but if these weren't all blurred out, they look exactly the same as everything else on the page because they're spreadsheets. Like they don't have any sort of like identifiable visual thing about them. So I know there's stuff like starred. So somewhere, presumably, I can star something. I don't know. So then when I came to Google Drive, I could go to my starred section, and then I could see my starred stuff, but that's not how I want to use it. Let's be honest, everybody uses search when they get to Google Drive. So like they can kind of get away with not actually having to have a UI that makes sense, or that makes it easy to discover your stuff. Dropbox Paper is newer, and it certainly has its problems. They've kind of decided like organization doesn't really matter all that much, and I'm okay with it. But I love it. It's really fun, particularly because I can do Markdown, and it like inline changes it to whatever I want it to be. But to be honest, I actually only use this part of the page. Because I don't know if y'all have used it and if you've done this, but you can connect your Google Calendar to it, and then it will bring up your 3 like upcoming meetings. Plus, if I actually brought this up live now, it would be like, you know, meet up Patrick's Rad Talk or whatever up there. So you can like instantly come in and start notes on the meeting that you're in. That's awesome for me because that's the way I use Dropbox Paper. I'm taking notes for meetings. I don't use this part of the page, but it doesn't really bother me because like I can do everything I need to over there. It'd be kind of neat if that area actually changed based upon the type of user you were and like what your behavior showed. So if you're not the type of person to go to a lot of meetings and take notes, what if it started suggesting templates for like you've written like 10 blog posts or drafts, and they all start off the same way. So maybe you have a thing over there that's like, start a new one of these. I don't know, haven't fully thought that one through, but that works really well for me because of what I do, but they could totally explore ways of making that work for everybody based upon how they work. You can visually see the results of repetition in the real world as well. So I'm going to totally kill this analogy, but here's my pants again. Well, this isn't going to work. I was putting them up on the screen because I didn't want everybody just looking down here. So don't. So when I bought my pants, they were like, you know, like what's it called? Raw denim or whatever. So there's all kinds of rules of whether or not you're supposed to wash them or not. So I don't, and I think I'm supposed to, but whatever. So I've been wearing them for a year, and they're starting to show signs that I'm the one that's been wearing them, and I think that's super rad. Like, you can't really. So like, all right, here, we're just gonna do this. So like, look, it's an iPhone. That's kind of fun. And I always keep my keys and like a pen and knife like right here. And it's like, it's actually, they're like changing into, they look the way they look because I'm the one that's wearing them. And I love that. You can also see where I blew out the crotch last month and had to get them repaired. But you should look up there for that one. So, have y'all heard the term hige? No? Okay. It's Japanese. I probably shouldn't say it, but it's for the wear patterns that do this number, that come out this way, and it's Japanese for whiskers, cat whiskers, so it's kind of funny. Farm tables were all the rage a couple years ago, I guess. Everybody loves the distressed look. I think it's way cooler when you're the one that has distressed something. I would probably buy this table if it were cheap, but I would much rather have this table that looked really nice and then set my kids to it with cups and let them live on it. And it shows the signs of the life that we've had with it. Like, I think that sort of thing is beautiful. We in our office we have some reclaimed barnwood. That's totally cheating. We're not a barn, but it looks cool, so whatever. All right, so what am I really talking about? I'm not really saying that we should all go and start like skeuomorphizing things based on like repeated usage of a thing, even though that is an idea, probably a bad one, but it's not exactly what I'm talking about. More what I'm saying is just to let the UI visually move around or change based upon how people are actually using it. So pretty sweet illustration, Travis. So Instagram. All right, first thing, this is not like one of those unsolicited redesigns. This is 5 minutes in Keynote to make a point. But I scrolled down because I wanted Travis's thing up here. But usually when you open Instagram, about like this much of the screen is taken up with stories, aka Snapchat. And then you've got this button right here that's go to the Snapchat camera. Or if you swipe right, I just figured this out the other day. If you swipe right on the entire screen, it also brings up the Snapchat camera. So that's cool, but I don't know how long that's been out, maybe 6 months or so. I've not used that once. And you know what I do use? I use this little button down here. In fact, I can confirm it's the add a post thing, take a picture button. I can confirm I've at least hit that 301 times because that's how many posts I have. I would guess all of the other interface items on this whole thing I probably hit like a total of a dozen times because you can double tap on a picture to like it. So I like things, I scroll, and I hit that. So what would this potentially look like if it became my Instagram? So this is really dumb and obvious, but let's just make a big button there. And we'll make it pink because they had pink somewhere else. And I'm glad this isn't going to show it, but I also made it a little distressed because why not? And then that that thing up here, let's get rid of that because I don't need it. That really doesn't look that much different, but it actually looks like the Instagram that I use a little bit more. Like we could spend 10 more minutes like breaking stuff apart and making it weird, but just in a little way. That's more of the Instagram I use. Slack. So we all love and hate Slack. I have, I think, 12 teams that I'm in on Slack. I kind of only use one. I'll say two just to sound like I do, but I just really just use this one. But I keep them all in there because people do communicate to me through those teams, and I need to be able to respond back to them, even though I'm not like scrolling around looking through everybody's posts all the time. So would it make sense for, after some time, for it just to do something more like that? I don't know, maybe the stuff should be at the bottom. Like there's a million different ways of accomplishing this, but like, can the interface change a little bit because of how I'm using it? Or like what if every time I open Slack, it was maybe after 15 minutes or 20 minutes, 30 minutes of not using it, every time I opened it, it automatically defaulted me back to that team. Because the only reason I generally use this interface is to go back to that team because I've gone to it in the first place. So I know that all starts sounding really messy and probably a horrible UX idea to start giving everybody a different experience based on how they use it. But why not try it and just kind of see where that takes you? Again, this is a thought experiment. One potential way that you could do it that's a little less crazy, you have user groups. You have different types of users that you've hopefully identified. Maybe they're UI groups. And so you have certain types of people that follow certain behavior patterns, and they fall into a certain UI group. Again, it's a whole can of worms, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about. Certainly not the first person to be thinking about this. Headless UIs, things like the Google Home and even Siri, and like things that learn, they are adapting. And they are changing how you interact with them based upon what you've done in the past. It doesn't happen as much with UI though, or with visual UI. That's GUI, right? Yeah. Okay. So if you want to, go Google things like adaptive thinking and adaptive UI and ubiquitous computing. I've not fully dived in, but when I was starting to look at examples of other people doing this, those three terms came up. Everything looked kind of ugly, but people are thinking about these things, so that's cool. Related, also look up progressive reduction. There's a blog post by Layer Vault where they talk about how when somebody's first using their application, the buttons they have labels, like text labels, and then after a little while they lose those text labels, and then a little bit after that they actually lose the chrome around the buttons and they're just icons. That's not per individual, but I still think it's an interesting idea. Okay, so what this whole thing was about, it's about trying to give your users a better sense of ownership in hopes that they feel like their data and their experience actually lives with you, or that your app is their app, right? So had kind of some weirdo ideas, had some slightly obvious ones. I'm gonna real quick give you 5 things. They're gonna map back to those other ones that you could potentially go back and try. Just be present for your users. Find some non-marketing reasons to communicate with them without being annoying. So instead of just emailing them and saying, hey, buy my thing or sign up, like give them some tips or whatever. Like so again, Ballpark that we own, it's mostly targeted at small businesses, particularly creatives, so freelancers and things. So we'll send out emails where we talk about running your small business and that sort of thing. So just having relevant content for them, just to remind them that you exist. Just try to think of some opportunities to start shifting content and data more into the ownership of the users. You don't have to do anything. Just like write them down and start thinking about them and seeing if that actually makes any sense for what you do. This is when you should do. Like go just make at least one meaningful customization opportunity. Just like, again, like start page, right? Again, has everything to do with what it is you build, but like let users actually take control of just one little thing and see what happens. And yeah, look at the scalability over time for your users. And lastly, this sounds kind of creepy, but figure out how you can look at how individuals are using your application, and then think about ways that you could potentially change their experience for them. So, thank you. I don't know anything, so I probably don't have answers, but you can try. Yeah. Say it to yourself a couple times first in practice. Yeah.
So I work in a relatively small company and I do web development. So one of the problems with working in that environment that I've run into is that everything relates back to time, and time relates back to control in a way. What the idea that you're talking about, where I think as a developer, it sounds personal and unique, which is what a lot of the web lacks in a lot of ways. And that is a potential way to attack the issue of there's too much stuff coming out at all times. Just look at say the word JavaScript in a browser and you get 10,000. How does someone there's got a top level of how this could possibly occur over time, like I would have by implementing it. How do I present that to, say, a marketing director who tells me what can and cannot be worked on? Like, hey, this is worth spending time on, because what it could do in return is increase the amount of time and investment that people put into the company, because they see that we are giving them the freedom and control that other places aren't.
Well, it's going to have a lot to do with the specifics of what it is that you're doing. Yeah. So, I mean, you hit it in the beginning when we're talking about loyalty. That if somebody feels like something belongs to them, they're much less likely to cast it off when something new and shiny comes up. How do you quantify that with like money? I don't know. Like that's not how I roll. We have other people in our company that does that, but. Yeah, I mean, it's a loyalty thing. I actually think that manual customization, just letting people change their experience, is potentially, again, not a developer, but potentially the lowest cost way into getting in there and making the biggest impact. Yeah, I mean, I totally empathize. We don't, at Simple Focus, we don't do a lot of what I just talked about. Like this is all like stuff to aim at, and just like let's aim at it and do little bits and try to move the needle slightly. So totally with you on that. I think he's bringing you the mic. Hold on.
One of the simpler ways to do that, which was pretty standard in the app world, not see checklist show up on your interface and let them uncheck things that they don't ever use. Just a hint, that's really cheap and also reduces the size of data that you're sending.
Right. Yeah, so turning on and off their own like features or UI elements. Yeah.
Time for one more.
I got the impression from your talk that you're talking about a lot of automation. For example, you talk about the paths through the woods or the notch on the door, things that just kind of happen automatically. I just want to bounce back off that and suggest that maybe that's been tried, and the reason it's not done as much is because Clippy. Everyone hates Clippy.
Right.
And there's a lot of things. I'm all for like users having control over customization. I think that's a great idea. But when you talk about things like automatically reorganizing, to like be honest, I have JeffFit. It's an app installed on my phone for tracking my gym workout routines. I have not been to the gym in months. And so if my phone were to automatically organize my icons based on which apps I used, that'd be pretty close to the bottom, but it's aspirational. And so I like to keep it near the top, even though I don't use it that often. It reminds me and encourages me that this is something I want to use more often. And so in that vein, no matter how good the AI is, it's never going to be able to get inside my head and understand what I want on the screen. So you actually using a thing isn't the only reason to have it there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a balance. Half of my opinions are based on music streaming services. Like that's kind of what they do when they have recommended items and suggested and discovery things. Like it's kind of a mix of follow your same patterns and be aspirational, if you will. So like I don't know, maybe there's some potential opportunity there. Like I'm with you. Like it totally like kind of. I want to back off a little bit about the idea of trying to control a user's experience like in that way and make decisions for them, because that's kind of antithetical to a lot of like the whole customization idea. So I think it's a balance. I think it's a thing to try that I don't know that I've seen that much. Like you brought up your phone. There, maybe someone can help me remember, but there was an Android home screen replacement that would, based on your location and your habits, would bring up different applications based on where you were. Do you remember what it was called? Yeah, Yahoo bought it, and then it died. Go figure. What was that? Oh, it didn't die. Awesome. Okay. So I thought that was really neat because when I'm, at home, there are like 3 applications that I use. When I'm at work, there are like 3 applications I use. So, but yeah, it's dangerous territory for sure. Good. Thanks.
Thanks a ton, Patrick. Thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely.
Come back with us next week for the trials and tribulations of building an Erlang game server with QP. Thank you all again.